This is the fourth class. If I'm not mistaken. Today is the 11th of March.
Is this the eyes of, I always forget which date.
15th.
15. I always think it's 11 because of two eyes, but 15.
Okay.
I know. It's not eyes, it's eyes with a D.
I think in Latin they say something like "idus." Anyway, so we wanted to get into the meaning of the thoughts that run through us all the time. And last time we talked about three different sources for these thoughts: the past, the present, and the future. The past, we said, is that a person is born in a state of chaos, which is an animalistic state. That's the person is born like an ayir per, like a wild. We had two different words for it. I think we used donkey in the end. We didn't use the other one, but it really is the other one. And so that's from the past. These are with us all the time. It's just that there are three different sources for how we're affected by the chaos inside, and it comes to the foreground of our mind all the time, and leads to sort of a chaotic sense of ourselves, of our surroundings, that we have to quiet all the time, that we have to subvert in some way or sublimate. Then we said that there's the current, the present source, which is that we're thinking about ourselves. Because we're thinking about ourselves, so that's causing us constantly to also begin to imagine different things that we don't need. And the final one is the thoughts about the future. And here, this is the main one that causes the mind to be occupied constantly by all kinds of wants and wills that are imaginary. Because I imagine, it would seem that this would be a good thing. I don't remember if we got to that last time, but it would seem that this is what drives humanity. That people in a healthy state of mind are thinking about their future. And that would seem to be a very healthy state of future. Mm-hmm. Because when you think about early man, the Stone Age, the most that they could do was subsist. They could just get by. They couldn't think about what am I going to do tomorrow, because you had to think about what am I doing today to survive. And Stone Age is when the patriarchs were alive. They lived in the Stone Age. Well, maybe not the Stone Age. Somewhere between the Stone Age and the what we call the Iron Age or the Copper Age, or whichever one. They already had tools made out of. But certainly the first 1,000 years of mankind was Stone Age.
If they were agricultural, well, they had to plan something if they wanted to plant.
Right, and we find that until Noah, it was impossible to do that because the ground was too tough. In a certain sense, the Torah identifies the transition period mostly with Noah, a little bit before him, because the last generation of Cain's, meaning the brothers of his wife, were the ones who developed iron tools. Or copper tools, or whatever it was. And it's very interesting that together, I mean, it goes together. There's been some written about this. The person who wrote about this the most was Manitou. Manitou was a French rabbi.
What is the name? Manitou.
Unfortunately, Manitou. That's not his name. Manitou. It's in French. It's Algonquin, actually. And he was in the French Scouts, which is like the Boy Scouts in America, or like Tzofim in Israel. And when you get to a certain rank, you have to choose a name, and the names are always Indian names. So this was his Indian name.
American Indian names? Or
Yes,
Indian names?
they're American Indian names, all of them.
That's the,
So he chose Manitou.
who was?
Manitou is the name of one of their gods. It's a name. It's a great spirit. It means great spirit.
In some tribe of America.
Well, it's not just some tribes. It's the Algonquin. If you go, I believe it was, it's about 100 kilometers west of Montreal. There's Grand Manitou Lake.
Right, I heard of it.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, there's such a place. So anyway, his name was Manitou, and that's what they called him. His real name was I forgot now. But in any case, he wrote about this. He tried to study the Torah in a more historical sense. It was another person who did this. He was a very deep thinker by the name of Rabbi Aaron Marcus. And he's worth anything you can get your hands on from him. Is whether it's correct or incorrect is besides the point. It's so original in his thinking. The three people were like this. This was the second one, Aaron Marcus.
What time?
He wrote, he lived in the 1850s. Manitou passed away about 20 years ago. Rabbi Aaron Marcus, he lived in the 1850s. He started out as an academic in Germany, and then he got caught by the cult. He became a chassid, God forbid,
Of whom?
of Reb Shlomo of no Tiferet Shlomo. Forget it. I'll never be a professor. He became a big chassid of Reb Shlomo of Radomsk, the Tiferet Shlomo, and he took his academic training, and he wrote an incredible book in German, explaining what Chassidus was. To date, I think it's the deepest explanation in a historical concept of what the Baal Shem Tov did. It's much deeper than anything else you read anywhere. He has some historical mistakes. He wasn't able to research everything, and the state of the research wasn't so good. So he heard a lot of stories, and he had to make do with what he heard. It's only been translated into Hebrew. I've never seen it translated into any other languages. But it's a phenomenal work. And then the third person that I wanted to mention is Rabbi
Wait,
Shem Tov Geffen.
Is this the current? Are these people that are describing the past
They all
current
dealt with this issue that we're talking about now,
about
about
meaning,
the
thinking?
movement from the Stone Age to the Iron Age, or whatever they're
But
called.
this is the second one, and the current where they're only talking.
Right, you're moving from a state of subsisting, of just surviving, into a state where you can begin thinking about the future. And again, the point is that to begin thinking about the future is what makes man greater than what he was before. And as we'll see, it's what makes you a tzaddik. A tzaddik is always firmly rooted in his mind in the future. He's not so much in the present. And so to bring from the future to the present, that's actually what faith and confidence is about. And we'll talk about that as we get to it. But here, the last person that dealt with this, his name was Shem Tov Geffen. And he's actually the grandfather of a famous Israeli singer, Aviv Geffen.
This is separate.
It was his grandfather. It's not even his grandfather. I think it's his grandfather's brother. Maybe it is his grandfather. One time, Aviv came to a friend of mine who lives right near me, and I saw him on the street. So again, I was thinking, I don't know, it came spontaneously. So on the one hand, do you tell somebody, what you're great for is not what you do now. What you're great for is that you had such a great grandfather. So I said to him, "Oh, here's the grandson of Shem Tov Geffen." He was shocked. First time anybody ever referred to him that way. Anyway, so Shem Tov Geffen also wrote an incredible book about ecology. He also was in the he started in the 1880s, and Rav Kook actually gave him a haskama to his book. It's one of the geniuses in the Jewish people that's not so well known. Recently, one of the other grandchildren put out a critical edition of his book. It's a
Can you
tremendous
get
book.
it today and I can hear it?
Okay. Anyway, so what's the idea? The idea is that the same people who invented tools, who were able to ensure that humanity had a future, were also the same people who invented musical instruments. So that's a very powerful connection that the Torah makes. These were all the grandchildren of Cain.
The grandchildren.
Okay.
The children of Cain?
The great, same generation as Noah, the seventh generation from Cain, Lemech's children, basically.
And Nama was Cain's
and Nama was Lemech's daughter.
Not Cain's daughter?
No, she's a descendant. She's the seventh generation from Lemech was the sixth, and she was the seventh. She and her brothers, Tuval Cain and the other Cain, whatever. It's very interesting the whole Cain episode, exactly what it symbolizes. But it's certainly he was the first one to build a city, Cain. So building a city is also forward thinking. It's a type of thinking that if you're even in agriculture, you're dependent on the weather, on nature. And the whole point of a city is to become independent, is to start living off of a trade, of manufacturing, things that are not related to nature. Is to become independent. And when you think about it, what Cain was, Cain's killing of his brother, at its heart, or at the heart of the issue, was the future. And that's really what they argued about. Said who takes the earth and who takes the spirit? Who takes matter and who takes spirit? So they decided to divide the world up. Apparently Cain brought up the issue. He said, we have to divide the world up because there's only two of us. So he said, I'll take matter. So you're left with spirit. That's Hevel means spirit. So they got into an argument one day. And the argument, so he told him, well, Hevel, who wasn't, I guess, thinking properly, whatever, said to Cain, well, we divided the world up, and the earth sorry, Cain said this to Hevel, since the earth is mine, so get out of here. Just fly up into the sky. And that's basically what he did to him. He released his soul. There's a lot to be said that Cain was always thinking about the future. That was his heritage, what he gave to his children also. So it's obviously it was done in the incorrect way, but there's always an understanding in Torah that only when Cain and Hevel's spiritual descendants can unify can the world be rectified, because really they represented two sides of what Adam was. So again, the interesting thing is about music, that the
Hevel
music.
doesn't have any descendants.
Yeah, Seth is instead of him.
What?
Seth was his reincarnation. So they represent. So one of the interesting things is that music goes together with future. It's future type of thinking, which can explain a lot about why music does what it does to us. Why does it lift us so much? Because it's a hint, it's a glimpse of the future. Sometimes it's also a glimpse of the past. But what?
Why is there supposed to do the future?
Because whenever we talk about a person being in a good mental state, we're saying that they have plans, that they want to achieve something, that they have goals, that they have a future, they have a sense of the future. When a person is in depression or whatever, there's no ability to connect to the future. There's no belief that there's a future. And the main purpose of music is to lift a person. Okay? And to lift them in the sense of giving them a feeling that there is a future. Saying that it somehow, that's how music touches us. It's true that there's music that's like, that's more reminiscent or sad or something like that. But there's no real sad music. What there really is longing. And longing, by definition, is really longing for the future. Nobody really longs for the past. If you're longing for the past, you're longing for the future. You're just building the future based on what you've already seen. Okay, but a tzaddik is a person who is constantly entrenched in his picture of the future. That's how he lives. That's how he thinks. And so when you're with a tzaddik, that's why it's so uplifting, because right away you have a feeling that I have a future. This is not the self pasuk. This is not the end of the road. That's the most important thing that you can give somebody. When we say people believe in me, what are we saying? They believe that I can be different in the future. They believe that I can succeed in the future, and so on. To believe in yourself is also the same thing. Is to have a belief in your future. So on the face of it, I would think that this is the best thing in the world to have thoughts about the future. Except the problem is that because so much of the present and the past in me is unrectified, that my past is chaotic. It's the animalistic state that I have ingrained in me, innate in me from the moment that I was born. And the present is all thoughts about myself. So the future becomes a sort of projection of those two onto the future. And so the things that I want, things that I will, they're not rectified, they're not taken from the right place. The future, by definition, has to be an unknown. If the future is just predicated on the past, so that's not real progress. And so the idea here is that faith is, first of all, cleaning all this out by saying that the real future is one that is, it's good, but it is unknown. Just as Hashem is unknown, just as Hashem cannot be fully known. That's what part of our psyche relates to that? What we call the Radla, the unknowable head. Okay? In the same way that the Radla can't know itself, that part of the Keter, that part of the crown, cannot have self-knowledge. Why? Because it's constantly changing. The future is always in flux. Not because there are different options and it's moving between them. It's in flux because it's undefined. Just like Hashem is undefined. So really when you say, who is Hashem, and you look at his name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, what does the Yud in the beginning do to a word? If you say, there's two ways to interpret it. One is that it makes it present, what they call continuous. Or the other one, which is simpler, much, much simpler, is it puts it into future tense. Okay, and if you take a verb, the verb is hava, to be, and you say yud before the hava, so what you've done is you made it will be. And that's like Hashem's other name, which is Eke Asher Eke, right? I will be what I will be. So that's the most important thing to have, to open up the faith that we have. That what I believe in, I ask myself, what do I believe in? So I believe in certain things that are in the past, but really they're not such a matter of faith. The things that I really believe in are what is destined to be. Okay. The most important one being Mashiach and the Tchias HaMeisim and all these types of future beliefs. So faith, Emunah, which is the Radla, the unknowable head, in the psyche, its purpose is to cleanse me, to purge me of all these remnants of a future that's based on the past, that's just more of the past, that's just thinking about the future as being some continuation of the past. So for instance, if I really am in depression and down and so on, so it doesn't mean that I don't have a future. On the contrary, if I didn't have a future, I might be okay. If I was just in the present moment, I might be okay. The problem is that in depression, the person perceives the future as just more of the present than the past. And you have to purge that. You have to clean that out. And those are what we call these seething thoughts. And we'll talk more about this word today.
You can't get rid of all of it. Can you?
Of what? Of the past?
Of the past.
I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want it to populate my future. And I don't want my future to be predicated by what my past was.
Right.
So I'm not getting rid of my past. I'm very happy with my past. And I have to come to
So
terms
what's
with
this?
it.
So the purging
The
is...
problem is that the past and the present, they impress themselves on the future. And so my future just becomes more of the same.
Right.
That's not faith in Hashem. That's faith in myself. Or that's faith in what I have been. That's what we say, you're a have-been. Or a has-been. What do you mean by that? Husband is a has-been. So what do you mean by that? There's always Baal Baal in Hebrew is a husband. In the future, we won't be called the Baal. We also won't call Hashem our Baal. We won't call him as our husband, because Baal is the name of an idol, of a false god.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it a false god? Because to say it in English, it's a has-been. It's like in the past. What is Baal? Baal means that everything is predicate. It's already, you do more of the same. You always worship him the same way. You do the same thing again and again and again. There's no, he's a constant. He never changes. But Hashem is always open.
So we should stop saying Baal Shem Tov.
Again, Ish Tov. Ish Shem Tov. There really means Baal. It means he's the master of the good name. But to say about a husband, it says, Lo tikrei li od ba'ali ki im ishi. That we won't call Hashem anymore our husband, in the sense of the Baal. We'll call him the other side of us, the ishi, which is like my mate, I guess.
How do you spell a she?
Ishi, Aleph Yud Shin Yud.
What is Ishiyut?
Ishiyut is personality. It's a modern.
Aleph Yud Shin what?
And it according to that understanding, Ishi means like myself. Like myself. It's the self. Ish is like the self. Okay.
Aleph Yud Shin what?
Shin Yud. Aleph Yud Shin Yud. There's a progressive women who don't call their husband Baal. They call him Ishi. Anyway.
Why did they call that idol Baal?
Because it was like, it controlled them. And it was like their master. And it meant that that you had to go through, it was like, which is always the fear of any kind of ritual, is that ritual becomes stagnant. And it stagnates the mind, it stagnates the heart. Because you begin to believe that if you do X, Y, Z, the result is always what you want it to be. And it becomes that the ritual is the main thing. But with Hashem, the main point is not the ritual. The ritual is only the container, it's only the vessel. But what goes into that ritual, that's what's more important. That's called Rahmana Libabai. That Hashem wants the heart. Meaning, the heart of the ritual is more important than the ritual itself.
When we do the mitzvot, it's how we put our heart in it.
And so, for instance, to do the mitzvah, you only need to do certain things. But in the end, if it's just you act towards it like it's some kind of ritual and it's supposed to give you some kind of result, that's incorrect. That's an incorrect way of thinking, and that was how the end of the first temple period was, because they were so ingrained in the Baal, they couldn't disconnect themselves from that type of thinking. So in the temple, they worshipped this way, that the rituals became important in and of themselves to the point of that this is what's sustaining the world, the ritual.
The korbanot?
Right, the sacrifices. And not the meaning behind them. Meaning that the person could go home and do whatever they wanted. Why? Because he's already got an insurance policy. What's the insurance policy? The ritual he did. He's got it covered. And that thinking was like Baal type thinking. And if you say if you do the same thing at home all the time, and you expect the same results, then that's not a very good strategy, right? People change over time. What was good a year ago is not good today. Sometimes not even yesterday. Okay. So that's what we talked about. Then we said that these thoughts, if you look at line vile waters, line 15. So really, that's a good translation, but there's a better translation. And it should be seething waters. Seething. What does seething mean? It means two things. It's either boiling hot, or it's moving very quickly. And we mentioned this last time, that today in physics it's almost the same thing. Heat means motion. Where does this word come from? In Hebrew it's Maim Zeidonim. And Maim Zeidonim is in Tehillim, in chapter 124. It's in Pasuk Hey, the fifth verse. And there it's, in translation, it's, over us would have swept the seething waters. Meaning they would have swept over us.
Which cathedral? 125?
124.
What is that doing?
Oh. So the root of this word, seething, so first of all, this is for the people like Edenics. Edenics is like an understanding that all the languages come from Hebrew. Okay, so actually, it's not such a big stretch to see the connection between seed and the two-letter root Zayin Daled. Zad. It's like it could have been like seed. Zad is like seed. You can also say seeth if you wanted to differentiate between the two.
Say that again?
Zad, Zayin Daled is the root.
That's for the making the lentil soup, is that
Right. And also from what she mentioned, what Risa mentioned, Zadon. They do something on purpose.
Right.
On purpose. That you have will. You can do
Intentional
willfully.
sins, it's usually used in the
Okay,
negative way.
amazing. But I'm saying that if you want to follow Edenics, it says all the languages came from Hebrew, so it's not very hard to see the connection between Seethe and Zad. So it sounds almost the same.
How does this making the soup and
Okay,
the
so
seasoning
right,
and
so that's where we're going. So who made? So Yaakov, on the day that Avram passed away, he made a pot of, I guess, we don't know what it was, but it was a pot of some kind of
soup.
dish. Vayazid Yaakov Nazid, something very hot. So it means to cook also, so to boil, make something very hot. So he made some very hot and boiling food. And the sages say that he made this because Avram passed away that day, and this was for the Sudat Avraham, for the first meal for Yitzchak, after his father passed away. He's an Avel. And so the first meal has to be given to him by somebody else. And traditionally, the first meal is made out of either eggs.
Wasn't Esau there? Esau,
Yeah,
shouldn't
yeah.
he have made it?
Maybe. We see that what you're saying is very important, because later when Yitzchak is about, or thinks he's about to die, so he asks Esav to make it, And perhaps because Yaakov was the first to make it for Yitzchak, when Yitzchak needed it for his mourning, so Yaakov again received the privilege and the honor of making it for Yitzchak. Then. So traditionally this meal is made out of either lentils or out of eggs. Why? Because they have no mouth, it says. So one simple understanding is, doesn't have anything to do with mouth, is that they're round. So why are they round? To tell a person that there is a cycle of life. And in the same way that the deceased passed away, the cycle will also repeat, meaning they'll be born again. So that's one explanation, but the deeper explanation is that they have no mouth, meaning that they don't have an edge. To have a mouth is like to have an edge. They don't have an edge. You don't know where to open them from. There's no, like when you try to open something and it's round and there's no place to really grab it. Why? Because the Avel, the mourner, is also not allowed to talk. The first 3 days, halacha is that he can't say hello to anybody. And even if somebody says hello to him, he can't say hello back. He has to be silent. The next 4 days, so if somebody says hello to him, he can answer. B'safar hafa it's called. Like the same as we do on Tisha B'Av, and we're in mourning. So if somebody says shalom to us, so we say. After the 7 days, so now he can greet people with shalom. He can use it. So he's not allowed to speak. He's not allowed to open the conversation, as it were, to say peace, because there's no peace with him. So it's a very interesting thing that it's almost too. So why don't we let him speak? Why not speak? The healthiest thing in the world is to speak. If you have a all of Torah and Nefesh is if you have a concern, you should speak. And it's all to.
But you said at some point that you shouldn't speak. You should let it percolate first before you speak.
Okay. So the reason is because of the Maimah Zaydunim. Because when a person is in chaos, when he's mourning, so nothing good is going to come out. This is all going to be just, and he's not going to be very happy with what comes out anyway. So it's a very interesting thing that this is a homeopathic remedy, that their blood is percolating, their mind is percolating, so we give them something that is very hot. That's what Yaakov did. He cooked something that was very, very hot. And we know that it was also very hot because when Esav saw it, what did he say? Give me from this red hot stuff. the red stuff. So red is hot. That's how we understand something is hot. So it's another strong explanation. So homeopathy says you cure like by like. So if the person is red hot inside and full of all kinds of thoughts, we give them something very hot to cool down. Another thing that is described this way is when you give tea to somebody who has a fever. It's the same idea, that the heat on the inside is taken down by heat from the outside. Sometimes we see this process.
And if you're cold.
What?
And if you're cold.
You're cold on the outside. Then something else. It means that there are different types of heat. The Gemara says 6 different types of heat. One of them is heat that needs water. It drinks water. So if you give it water, it'll get hotter. So that's like the normal inner heat of the person. But there's also heat that that can't drink the water, but rather it's put out by water. There's heat that drinks water. Again, that's like the more feverish type of heat, and that it's put out by the water. But the question still remains: why do you drink hot water? You should be drinking cold water.
Because likes cure likes.
But so the addition here is that there's also the additional element of the heat curing the heat itself, which is like a chiddush. But we found out by experience that that's what works. Okay. So all these vile thoughts, these seething thoughts, have to be purged by Emunah. So why does Emunah do this? How does it have this power? Because he says, first of all, it's a picture of the future. But as we said, that Emunah is higher than will. It's because it's higher. It's the highest head of the crown, and will is only the first head. It has a power over it, so it quenches it. Okay. So all this, they have to be removed. Now let's read the next paragraph. There are only rectification, all these thoughts, you can't fight them. Here, we're not fighting the misconception of I as the center of the universe. We're putting it aside. We're saying, whether we like it or not, right, this is after Perek Bavodat Hashem, it's second stage. In rectifying the ego, what you're learning now with Rabbi Ehrenberg, again, so the main work in the person's life is to try to combat these thoughts, not to put myself in the center. But here we're saying it's a given that this is going to continue throughout your life. You can't fix this. You can only become aware of it.
So you're not purging it.
I can't get rid of it. I will always go back to thinking about myself. It's like sort of like again, hopefully the times in between will grow in length, meaning that I won't think of myself for a long time. And then suddenly I will think of myself. But there's an understanding that I can't really get rid of them. So what do I need to do? Their only rectification can be in their nullification and removal from the consciousness by the power of pure faith in the Almighty alone. That's it. That's all you can do. You can ignore it. You put your focus on faith, and faith itself purges. You can't fully ever change. So what do you do in order to restart yourself? You exercise your power of faith. Faith had not much to do with rectifying the ego. But here, because what rectifies the ego? Lowliness. So it's true that they're related. This is the higher crown, that's the lower crown. Ken Malchus, which is lowliness. Lowliness is the inner experience of Malchus, of kingdom. So the kingdom is called the lower crown. Keter Tachton. And the crown is Keter Elyon. So they have a relationship, but it's not the same thing. So to rectify my ego, I have to be lowly. That I can be permanently. I can be always lowly. I can't stop thinking of myself, but even when I think of myself, what do I say about myself? I'm very distant from serving Hashem. That's my lowliness. That's my vessel that I'm creating all the time in order to pull down my sense of nullification. But here, there's something new. It's completely different. I'm not trying to... every person has a point of faith in themselves. There's no work needed. You don't have to work on it. You have it. This is what the Alter Rebbe calls the Pintel Achid. This is the very point, the very essence of what it means to have a soul. That there is faith. If the faith were somehow to disappear, the person would disappear. So the faith is always there. You just have to restore it in the sense that convince the person that they have faith. What does that translate into? Into an ability to push away everything and to think there's only Hashem, nothing else in the world, and Hashem is good.
It's to tell him he has choice, free choice.
And that'll restore choice. It restarts the whole system. It restarts the whole soul. It recalibrates the whole psyche. That's why it's the first point, and it's a point. It's a point of faith. So if I can tap into it, and what that literally means is an ability to sit here for 2 minutes and the world evaporates in front of me, my thoughts evaporate, everything is gone except for one thing that I know. Hashem is everything and Hashem is good. That's all I need to know. I can't live like that. That's no way to live. Because you can't live without a world. You're here to be in the world. You're not here to purge the world. But from time to time, you have to do that. How many times a day depends on how you are. But you at least have to do it once a day. And we'll see when you have to do it. But there has to be an ability to tap into, to use emunah. And that's what it does. It cleanses out all these seething, very boiling wills and thoughts and whatever fills my mind. And it doesn't get rid of their source. They'll come back. But when I do that, I'm preparing myself to build something else, to build something new also. I'm giving myself a chance to, in the empty space that's created, to begin to build something that's positive. It's to take a recess, to take a time out. That's what it means. But it's not just emptiness. Like we said, it's not like last time we said that. It's not like the East. In the East, they feel that when you reach the state, there's only nothingness.
It's terrible.
It is very terrible.
Depressing.
Yeah, it could be. They think it's neutral. They call it neutral. They say that if you imagine now that there's only God and He is only good, so you're still full of something. You have to purge that also. Say, no. That's the difference. When we finish purging, what reveals itself? Hashem's goodness. Hashem is all good. Because the creation is an act, is a willful act from Hashem. And it came to express His goodness. That they don't believe in.
So it's not even Avodah Zarah. It's like nihilist.
Okay, right, exactly.
Right.
It's a philosophical. It's not what we call idolatry. It's a lack of true theology.
True theology, is that?
They don't have real theology. They have some. They have some psychological knowledge. They have a great deal of psychological knowledge, but because they're missing. What are they missing? When did we experience this? We experienced this when we came out of Egypt. Coming out of Egypt was the purging that we had to go through. Again, we talked about the parting of the Red Sea as an act of purging, cleansing out everything. And when it was revealed, it wasn't just empty space. Say Chazal, what do we see? There's fruit trees and birds, and it's all good. They're not saying that we're really fruit trees or not. I don't know. It's a medrash. I don't know what actually was there. But what they're coming to say is that when you experience the parting, when you experienced everything opening up, it wasn't just empty space there. It wasn't some nothingness. It was full of goodness. Every manner of goodness that you can imagine was there. But in a simple sense, it's just there. And that's what the Medrash comes to fill in. Because you could think that it just went on dry land, and that was it, more of the same. It wasn't just more of the same. When you part the Red Sea, when you part the waters of the finite, as we said, that's what Yam Suf means, and you get to the infinite, you realize that the infinite is good. It's full of good things. Okay. But notice here that he uses two words, nullification and removal. It's not enough to nullify, you also have to remove. And in a moment, let's read a little bit more, we'll see that there's a third word. So I'm going to read a little bit to get to the third word. So their only rectification being their nullification and removal from the consciousness by the power of pure faith in the Almighty alone. This is the first and most primary art form practiced by the divine soul. Meaning it's an art. When you want to create, you have to have a blank canvas. And the divine soul is called a part of the creator that has become a creation. It acts just like God did. In the same way that when Hashem created the world, He first created an empty space. If that empty space is not really empty, it's full of goodness. Hashem's plan. The divine soul's craft resembles that of its source, like Hashem, whereby the inception of all positive and holy artisanship is contraction, the purging of all thought providing a void, an empty space for the worlds which represent the rectified character of a place to stand, in which to stand. This constitutes the sacred service of solitary meditation, Itbodedut, what in Breslov is called Itbodedut, whereby the power of faith ingrained in the unknowable head is strengthened by allowing it to trickle down into one's consciousness, clearing it and purifying it. So this is the third word I wanted. Purifying. So it nullifies, it removes, and it purifies. There's 3 acts that are done. Why? Why 3 acts?
To correspond with past, present, and future.
Maybe. So to understand this, we have to understand that there's the difference between faith and confidence is like the difference, we're going to have many of these, but it's like the difference between smell or fragrance and taste. Faith, emunah, is like a smell. It's an odor, a good odor that something gives off, a good fragrance. When somebody has emunah, they smell good. That's the image. That's the metaphor that the sages use. Where do they use this? They say that the Mashiach, he will judge by his sense of smell. What do they mean? That he's looking for one thing, for people who have trust in the future. So he says that if you smell good, it means that you're ingrained in the future. You're able to cleanse yourself from all your worries, and all your problems, and you can come before him and you smell good. It's like the Rebbe had this thing. The people with marash hora, with melancholy, shouldn't come to me. It's not because he can't stand it. Of course he can stand it, but it's a bad fragrance. And marash hora is somebody who's given up on the world. Melancholy means the person has given up on life. We talked about this once. The cynics came from melancholy. A cynic is somebody who's given up on the world. Really, it didn't mean cynic once. It used to mean a philosopher. A philosopher was somebody who gave up on the material world and he took the spiritual world. He took the world of thought. So it's called a cynic. And they suffered from melancholy. What is a melancholy? I can't stand the physical world. Nothing good is ever going to come from it. The physical world is a waste of time. It's all destined to be destroyed. How many movies, series, books does the Western world put out every day on the end of the world? From here to the end of the world. There's no end to it. Why? Because they smell terrible. That's why it's zombies, and they all smell terrible. It's all the decay of death. Because that's how they see the physical world. There's no hope here. There's nothing to live for. The only thing I want is that the end of the world should come, and I should have a big machete, and I can kill and destroy whatever I want. And it's all mine now. That's what they wanted for. So that's the complete opposite. It just stinks. The whole thing is just odiferous, right? That's the real word. Odiferous means it smells acrimonious. It's terrible. You can't smell it. So when we're entrenched in that, in the past, in the past, informing the future, and we look at the future and it's not any good. So we should know that what we should feel like, I mean, the way to sense it is that this is like fragrance, it's like smell. It's not something real. As opposed to bitachon, as we'll see, confidence, which is taste. Taste is real, is something real. There's a whole question in halacha about whether reach teikar, it's called, whether smell in an oven, for instance. I cooked something,
Right, it's not really a,
okay, and only the smell of it, and nothing, meaning I cooked say a meatloaf in an oven. Obviously, the smell departed the meat, and it filled the oven. It was very hot, and so the sides of the oven, they took it in. So does that make the oven now fleishik? Does it make it? So that's the whole question of halacha, whether reach ki kal, whether smell indicates that the thing that gave off the smell is really there. So the chumrah, yes, the kula, no, so it doesn't matter. But tam is always ki kal. But to taste, if there's taste, that's how you know if something's treif or not. If you can taste the milk inside the meaty dish, so obviously that's usher. If you can taste the type of viscera that fell into a pot, you can taste it. It's a different species. It's a different mean. So that's tam. Tam says it's here. So confidence is about being. It's about something here. Fragrance and faith is more something spiritual. And that's how you see it. So in smell, you have to go through 3 stages in order to clear the air. And that's the way you should think of faith. Faith is clearing the air. The empty space is like an empty of air. And even how does the Ari call it? The Arizal. He says, Avir panui, empty air. He even calls it that. There was he says, no air from before, right? When Hashem created the empty space, the void, he uses the language that it was not just a makom panui, it's also an avir panui. No avir was left over. It's very close to light. We said avir and light, and avir and are almost the same word. So when you clean something from the air that's in it, so you need 3 stages. The first one is nullification. What does nullification do?
wait, this is different than purge, remove, and purify? This is going to be a
We're
new
explaining
3?
what purge means. That there's 3 stages to it. Or it's how you
Purge
see it in
means
yourself.
nullify?
3 things: nullify, remove, and purify. And it's all taken from the imagery of how you change the air in a place.
Huh.
Reb Nachman has a whole Torah on this.
Nullify the air?
Okay, so you don't nullify the air. What do you nullify? You nullify the source of the acrimonious smell. What's the source? Me. That's why it's called nullification. Because what am I thinking of? Of me. And what am I thinking more of? Of my imaginary me needs. The things that me needs. So they have to be nullified. Even though this is emunah, and emunah is like a point, and it's hard to see in it any kind of process, but here there's also a process. So first of all, the first thing to get rid of is the source of where did all these seething thoughts come from? Where did they come from? They came from me. So I have to get rid of that source. The second thing is I have to remove it. How do you remove? How do you get rid of how do you nullify the source? Let's say you have a dish that's full of some terrible odor. What do?
You have to act on it.
You put something on it. That's the nullification.
Put what?
You put something on it so that it doesn't continue to give off the
In this
bad
case,
smell.
what do you put? What is it you're putting?
Put a lid on it.
No.
On yourself. Put a lid on your thoughts. Stop your thoughts. They're not interesting. You keep thinking this is I'm the most interesting thing I have in my life. I'm not. I'm the only one who can think these thoughts, so I think they're important. But
Does that come from Ratzon? Like if you have the Ratzon to do it, that's what Hashem will do?
okay, the moment that you want to stop, you'll stop. I can just stop. Again, I need faith for it, but this is like a representation of that I want to stop thinking about myself. I want to stop thinking about the past. I want to stop. I want to let the future be open. I want to open it up. I have to clear the air here from everything that there was before. So first of all, let's put a lid on it. The second thing you need to do is to remove it. It's actually to take that dish now that has a lid on it and move it away. Anyway.
It's separation.
Okay, that's a separation. So the first one is achna'ah,
Mm-hmm.
submission, is to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is to separate and move it out. But that's not enough. You have to also
Enjoy it.
purify. You have to use air freshener.
Beautify it.
So as much as again, you could say that in the East all they come to in the end is just to put a lid on it, and that's it. But since it doesn't exist, you don't need to remove it. But we say no, it's not enough to submit it. You also have to separate. You have to take, and more importantly, at the end, you have to fill it with. You have to fill your mind with good thoughts. This is the feeling that Hashem is good. That's the purification. And that Hashem is good is already the beginning of what, it's not yet exactly, but it's the beginning of what we'll call confidence. And this we'll see in the next statement. We'll just get to it, because we'll come back and maybe see a few more things. But there's a, and unfortunately this is of course not translated. I didn't translate it, because I thought it was too difficult to translate. So I'll have to do a better job next time. But let's read the next
You mean
paragraph.
we have to go through this course again for you?
Yeah, of course. This process is also alluded to in the idiom, first darkness, then light. And it says in the Gemara that first there was darkness, actually this was in Daf Yomi a week ago. First there was darkness, then there was light. Right? Vayi-erev, vayi-boker. First there was evening, then there was day. So Hashem first created the darkness, and then He created the light. But you have to create darkness. Faith is darkness.
Wow.
It's surprising. But again, it's a feeling of nothingness, but our nothingness is very good. How do we see that it's good?
Because something's going to come of it.
And then it doesn't say this here, but faith acts like the sunset, the setting of all light that filled the skies, which are the thoughts that illuminated the fabric of our consciousness, are cleared by faith. The assumption is that what faith does, it's not darkness in the sense of, darkness seems to be like something negative. It's the setting of the light on what was. It's getting rid of the past. It's letting it let it go. Because it didn't come from anything good to begin with. You have to know how to go to sleep at night. To go to sleep, lights out, means to let go of what was yesterday. And you can't move forward to tomorrow, to a new light, if you can't go through faith, which is the darkness. And it's called darkness because in a sense everything is empty. But it's not so simple, because there's how is this described in the Torah? Uba hashemesh v'tahil. And the sun will set and it will be purified. What will be purified? So say Chazal, Taher Yoma. That the day is purified. The day is cleansed. So when you think about the sun setting in the ocean, which is where it sets, what is it doing? It's tavling. It's
Well, it doesn't
purifying.
always set in the
But it's
ocean.
not the sun that needs the purification. What needs the purification, what needs to go through this whole cleansing process, this whole purification process, is the previous day. Is all the thoughts that I've accumulated and tried to achieve and so on, and everything that in the end, my previous day was always not as good as tomorrow will be. In the sense of my advancement, in the sense of my moving forward. Of course, yesterday I was less than I am today, because every day I'm moving forward to become more and more a servant of Hashem. So yesterday was something that was negative, relatively speaking. That needs to be purged. That needs to be ended. It needs to drown down, or tavel, like it's going to the mikveh, into the darkness. And it's taveling into the light. It's called Taher Yoma, that the day is purified. It's an incredible thing. If you don't know this, what do you think? That night is terrible. Night, gives you all the feelings of doubt or more like it is in the Western world. It's the scariest time of day and so on. So,
And so somehow this all leads to confidence because now you can see.
because now a new day is going to emerge.
New tomorrow.
The new tomorrow that's the confidence that today I will be better. But the feeling is at the moment of sunset is of faith. So sometimes you say faith is to get through the night, right? Because it is a difficult night. But every day that's normal, faith and night mean that I'm purging the previous day. I'm getting rid of it. I don't need it anymore. I did what I needed to do, it's over. I did as much as I could. And so the cleansing process ends with purification. What is a purification? It's a feeling that it's good now. Whatever, it's over. And when a new day will dawn, it'll be all good. And I'll see the good. Meaning at night I can only believe that there's good. And that's emunah. I only believe that it's good. But when the day dawns again, I'll see the goodness in the same way that I see, that's what it's called, the bitachon, is to have confidence that I will see it with my physical eyes, mamash, here in this world. And every day that goes by, every night that comes, is to purge the previous day's thoughts and what I did. And it's also in the sense of, even if it was a very good day, the previous day, it has to be purged. Why? Because you have to go to a new level. You can't bask in the light of the previous day. So this actually is a holy name. It's called the Yud Lamed Yud. It's the only name that you can think of, which is Yom Laila Yom. Every day has a night before you can have another day. Before you come to a new Yom, every day is a new level of service. It's a new level of life. But to come to the new level, you have to have in the middle a purging. So where do we see this? How much time do we have? I don't know if we have any time left. What time is it?
1:30.
1:30. Okay, we've got a couple minutes. So we'll start this topic. It's also a very big topic. But it says that when Hashem created the world, He created the world and then He threw it out. And He created another one and He threw that one out. And He created another one and He threw that one out. Until He came to our world, the world that we live in. So the Medrash asks, again, it's a Medrash, I don't know what Hashem did. But why does it want me to see things that way? Because it says, why did He throw those ones out? Because they're not what I was looking for.
So we have a model for this one you just taught.
And that's the basic model that Hashem put into the world. He did this to teach the world, meaning, how did He know that this was the world that He wanted?
We just decided.
Because this world wasn't afraid of throwing itself out.
Wait a minute.
It had learned from the previous worlds that you shouldn't be afraid of being tossed out.
Well, how?
Again, what did Hashem do? He created the world, He looked at it, now what I wanted, threw it out. Made a new world. That wasn't what I wanted, threw it out. Made a new world. Why did He do all this? Because He was looking for a world that knew that the previous world was thrown out, and it wasn't afraid to be thrown out also.
Well, how do you know that?
So it's an insight. How do I know that?
No,
Does
how
Rav
did
know
the
that?
Midrash, how did they describe it?
The Medrash just says that these I didn't like, and this one I like. So what did you not like about it? What do you like about this? You have to ask a question. What did you not like about the previous ones?
That we weren't afraid.
That they wanted to hold on very strongly. That's exactly what the Arizal builds into what we call the world of Tohu, the world of chaos. That each one of them says, each one of the Sfirot, the world of chaos says, I want to hold on to everything.
Okay, got
I don't want to give anything up.
Okay.
He's not willing to go through a night. There's no nighttime. In the world of chaos, there's only daytime all the time. It's not a real world. Hashem taught the world. He was waiting for a world that would pick up the teaching. Don't be afraid. Like I'm not afraid to create a new one. Don't be afraid to create a new one yourself. Every day that comes is a new world. Don't be afraid of it. And when we found that here's a world that's willing to do that.
And what do we mean? We say now, the day starts at 9. But in the future, the day will start with the morning.
Okay.
Is that true? Why?
There won't be night.
No, the way the thing, I'm not sure. I haven't seen a discussion of this, but in the temple, everything goes according to the day. So the night follows the day. And then when you say that a person has 2 days to eat a korban, you say it's a day, a night, and a day. It's not a night, a day, and a night, but rather a day, a night, and a day. So that's like a day, a night, and a day. Most of the korbanos are 2 days. I think most of them. Some of them are just 1 day. But if you have 2 days, it means you have a day, a night, and a day. So we'll talk more about this next time. What does this mean in the psyche? That when you go through a process of purging, it's also it's a willingness to give up the past. It's a willingness to move forward.
It is to purge in order to...
Okay. So I said the minimum is that you do it once a day. When do you do it? Just before, so either then or just before dawn. Either at the end of the previous day or at the beginning of the new one. But you have to go at least once every day to accept that what I have now is something new. And I can't rest on my laurels. And more importantly, Hashem recreates the universe every day, every hour. So you can do this every day, you can do this every hour, you can do this every minute. But to know that every time it's created again, it will be good, because that's what Hashem is. He's good. And it's all to reinstill hope in the person and a positive attitude that change is possible. Not only is it possible, it's the purpose of all of life.
Would you suggest like an image that one could have to evoke that?
Sure.
What is your image? Would you come?
So exactly that feeling of the sun setting in the waters and the sun rising over the mountains, for me, is like the image. And it's the image that's used in movies also. When you want to say, okay, the past is done, so they show a sunset. When you want to instill hope, and it's a new start and a new day, sunrise. It's these images are so ingrained in the human psyche. You just have to understand them properly, because sometimes they use it, I don't know how they sometimes they use it like sunset is some terrible catastrophe. But it's not. It's that really you have to understand that this is the end of that previous encounter, that previous life, that previous whatever it was. And now we have to cleanse from it, and the next morning we start anew. A whole new world. Those, I think, are the most powerful images. But again, you can use the fragrance. The fragrance is harder to get, but you can get it also. That's like air. That first of all, to quiet my mind, I have to put a lid on the source. I can't get rid of the source, but I can put a lid on it. Then I can extract it, I can remove it. And finally, I have to fill my head. This mamish you can do is guided imagery. Fill my head with air freshener, with the best smell I can imagine.
Better than air freshener. You have to get a better image.
Yeah, and then perfume.
Well, there are some natural air fresheners.
Yeah, but we don't, you could think of your
Okay.
car and
Oh, yeah. Just-
If you chose to sit in them.
Like, often people like